How
We're
fancy are
live.
we? We're live.
Well, the thing is, I think that only like the last 5 or 6 seconds of our cool new intro actually showed, because
It needs to be like a complete 30-second intro to give
yeah,
time for all
I'll
the
do it.
feeds to connect.
I
But
will do it. Wait, also look at this background. We have some little like maple leaves or something like leaf. I don't know where that
leaves,
came from.
leaves, we're leaves. I mean, that's because we're growability, and we are about leaves and trees and organic growth. And
There you
yeah,
go. There you go.
so all right. Well, for
I
those of
love
you
it.
joining us live, we are Joshua McLeod and Bernie Anderson, and we are live recording our weekly Growability podcast. So thank you for joining us. You are welcome to hang around and see how the sausage is made. If you don't have time to hang around, it's okay, because we will have this an edited podcasty version with bumper music and fanciness, sometime soon. So you can go to growability.com/podcast and watch all of our episodes or listen to all of our episodes. So,
Or
all right.
YouTube
Or YouTube.
Growability,
YouTube's great. You
or
can watch. You
Audible,
can,
or
yeah,
wherever
or
you
Audible,
podcast your life.
Spotify. We're on Spotify. We're on all of the podcast places. So, all right, Joshua, you ready to go? We are
I'm
going to
ready.
record this thing now. So I'll give us an intro and we'll just dive in. Welcome to the Growability Podcast, where we help business coaches become better coaches and business leaders build better systems. I'm your co-host, Bernie Anderson, along with the founder of Growability, Joshua McLeod. This is season 3 of the podcast, where we are focusing on how to be a better business coach and introducing each of our 35 tools in the Growability Business Operating System. So, Joshua, what are we talking about today in 30 seconds or less?
Great question, Bernie. So today we are going to talk about 3 of the 7 most important questions that you can ask a business or nonprofit leader. And we're doing this using some of the questions that are in the very first Growability tool. Whenever we work with a client and we are systematically going through the Growability toolkit, the first tool is the field of business tool. So today we are going to be walking through 3 of the questions in the Growability field of business toolkit.
Yeah, and Joshua, I'd just say this is a super important tool, and just expressing to anybody listening to this podcast today, to our listeners, this is a super important tool for us to know and to understand. So, why is asking the right questions for your business or nonprofit so critical?
Yeah, Bernie, you can tell a lot about a person by the questions that they ask or the questions that they don't ask. I remember being kind of a young, I wasn't yet a consultant. I was kind of a hot shot employee or team member. And somebody said to me, "You know what your problem is, Josh? You never ask any questions." And I was so offended. And now I reflect back and I'm like, that was my problem. I never asked any questions. Asking questions as a leader is one of the most important activities that you can do, particularly when you're asking questions about your own organization and the impact that you want to make in the world. Our marketplace is always changing. There's a tendency for leaders to get this idea of, hey, what got us here will get us there. But the reality is, most of the time, what got you here won't get you there. And it's critical to ask the right questions so that you don't get stuck in the past. It's possible that your entire premise for your business has changed in the marketplace, and it's really important for you to make a change in your activities and the actions that you provide. Think about Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster Video stopped asking questions about their business, and then they went out of business. They stopped asking questions, what is the most convenient way for someone to rent a movie? And they weren't asking that question, and people moved to online streaming instead of driving to the video store for a DVD or a VHS. From a coaching perspective, asking questions if you are working with a leader of a nonprofit or a for-profit organization who is a coach, from a coaching perspective, asking the right questions is really about it's really about discovering the maturity of your client. And maybe maturity might be too strong of a word, but like how your client answers questions tells you a lot about where they're at in their organization, in their life, in their mental space, in the way that they think. So from a business leader perspective, asking the right questions is critical for your market and understanding your core business. From a coaching perspective, asking the right question is really critical to get an assessment of where somebody is at, because you want to help them grow on their journey. So questions are always good. Asking questions is great. Asking the exact right question is really great. And so that's why at Growability, we put a lot of work into making sure that the questions we're asking are exactly the right questions. That's how consultants make money. Consultants make money by asking the right question of the leader that they're working with.
Yeah, 100%. Really, Joshua, the most underrated leadership skill is question asking good questions. And so this is really important. It's an important conversation that we're about to have today. So, Joshua, tell our podcast audience what these 3 most important questions are that every business or nonprofit leader should ask. And why are we only giving 3 questions when I'm looking at this sheet right here? There are 7 important questions. So we're only given 3. Why is that?
Well, that is a good question. So you're already doing it. You're asking questions. This is great. Well, the reason why we're only doing 3 of the 7 questions on the Field of Business tool, one, is because our goal in these podcasts is to keep them to 15 minutes or around 15 minutes so people will actually listen to them. And our last podcast was 35 minutes long. So I'm like, we got to break this stuff up. Secondly, we are not giving away all of our questions, because I'm trying to get every business leader that I know to get a copy of the Growability Toolkit, which not only has the 7 questions in this one tool, but hundreds of incredible questions for the entire toolkit. And so if we give it all away, nobody's going to buy our $250 toolkit. So I only want to give enough to get that appetite whetted, while at the same time providing some value. But to answer the ultimate question, what are these 3 most important questions that any business or nonprofit leader should ask? Here they are. Number 1, what is the problem that your business overcomes, or the opportunity that your business provides? And that same question for a nonprofit, the nonprofit version asks the question, how does your nonprofit primarily contribute to human flourishing? And then you add, what's the problem that you overcome, or the opportunity that you provide? So number 1, most important question that you can ask any business or nonprofit leader, what is the primary problem or opportunity that your business provides? Number 2, where does 80% of your profit come from? Or if you're a nonprofit organization, where does 80% of your financial support come from? And number 3, what is your obvious advantage? So an obvious advantage is something that you do that your competitors have a really hard time competing with. What's something that you do that's hard to copy? Other people call it an unfair advantage. And in the nonprofit version, you wouldn't say, what do you do? What's your obvious advantage that your competitors can't compete with? In the nonprofit, you say, what's your obvious advantage that other organizations that do similar things can't compete with? When you ask these 3 questions, they really determine, or how you answer these questions really determines the scope of your organization. And in many ways, it determines the success potential for your organization. If you have the wrong answer to these critical questions, what's the problem you overcome, or the opportunity you provide? Where does your profit come from? Where does 80% of your profit come from? And what's your obvious advantage? If you have the right answer to those questions, your organization has no ceiling. If you have the wrong answer to those questions, it's possible that your organization is going to go completely out of business. So answering these right questions is really important.
Absolutely, Joshua. These are critical. I mean, they're critical. What's the primary problem or opportunity you're addressing? got to know that. Where's your money
Yeah.
coming from? Where's at least 80% of your money coming from? And what is your obvious advantage? What is the thing that you do better than anyone else? And really, Joshua, on the surface, these questions seem kind of basic in a lot of ways. They're basic questions that are often ignored. So what are some of the consequences for leaders or for organizations who don't have answers or who don't have the right answers to these questions?
Right. That's great. Yeah. So let's take the first question. What is the problem that your business overcomes, or the opportunity that your business provides? Do you remember this company that popped up like a flash in the pan a little while ago called what's it called? Quibi? Or
Yeah.
Quibi?
Until
I think it
today,
was
I'd
like
forgotten they
Quibi.
existed. But yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So there was this organization that popped up called Quibi. I think it was Quibi, like Quip or something like that. We should have looked that up on AI. I'm going to call it
Quick
Quibi
bites.
for
I
the
think it's
podcast today.
quick
Bites.
Quibi.
Quibi. So Quibi.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't
There you
know.
go. So it was such a rememberable organization. We can't even remember what the name of it is. So here's the thing. So this company, they seem to have a really good idea, right? So they are looking at the marketplace and they're like, everybody loves media, but nobody has any time. And so there's a bunch of amateurs that are creating media on YouTube. What if we had professionals create all these 2-minute, 3-minute videos where we had like a whole movie in a 2-minute section, and everybody's going to want these? So the problem with Quibi is that they created a solution to a problem that nobody had.
Right.
Nobody out there really cared about better quality in the 2 to 3 minute videos that you're watching on YouTube. There's movie trailers for that, but the movie trailer is just a bite. It's a taste of the 2-hour long escape that I want to get at the movies. So by having the wrong answer to the question, what is the problem that your organization overcomes, or the solution that you provide, they created a problem that nobody really wanted. So having that question right, like if I go to somebody with a business idea and I'm like, hey, people really want like triple-decker hot dogs, and then it's like, well, no, people don't really want triple-decker hot dogs. They want double-stacked hamburgers. That's the thing. Like, people want that. I want a double quarter pounder or something like that.
Right.
I can get that at McDonald's. A triple-decker hot dog isn't something that people are demanding. So if I have this idea, but there's no market for it, I really have to make sure that I answer that question correctly. On the profitability question, this one is often this is probably a bigger problem. I mean, anybody who goes into a business, they're asking the right question. What is it that is the problem that we solve, or the opportunity that we supply? A lot of times, though, people don't realize how much money is necessary to solve that problem versus what they're able to charge for that thing. One of the biggest challenges that any business owner is going to face is, can I solve the problem or create the opportunity and still have a healthy profit margin? Because if I'm not able to make enough money solving this problem, or providing this opportunity, I won't be able to stay in business long. And so Sears is a great example of a company that lost sight of where their profitability came from, and they eventually went out of business. So if you're in the younger generation, you may not even think about Sears. Anybody that's like 40 years old and up, they're like, Sears used to be a huge thing. Sears was where you went for like your lawn and garden stuff. This is before Home Depot and Lowe's. There was Sears. You went and got your tools there. You could get anything there. It was a department store. It was like a precursor to
So I, as
Walmart.
a kid, had the Sears Christmas catalog would come in the mail every year. And so like my generation would like get that catalog, and that's where you make your Christmas list from. Like there's all kinds of cool toys, and that catalog was everything, man.
Yeah.
So
And it's funny because Sears is definitely one of the best success stories in American business history. Sears went from this catalog company that provided like anything you can get in a catalog to these remote locations where there was only a five and dime store, not a five and dime store, like a what do you call those? Like it
general
was
store
it
or
was
something.
Where there was a general store. The only thing
Right.
they had was a general store. And then they were like, well, let's set up this catalog company. And then they moved into the retail space. And when they moved into the retail space, they were equally successful because they still did all the catalog stuff, but then they had retail places and people would come. But what happened is that they got a new CEO, and the CEO decided that they were going to run Sears more like a hedge fund instead of stick to the core brands and the core things that they had done in the past that made it work. So you think about like your mutual funds or your financial investors, they're always looking at the diverse portfolio. Let's have a wide, diverse portfolio of different things that we invest in, and then we'll just, some will fail, some will do great, and we'll make a ton of money. Well, what Sears did is they diversified their portfolio, and they ignored the things that were actually making them money. So there were like one of the things that made Sears money was Craftsman tools. Right. Everybody loved Craftsman tools. So now instead of continuing to invest in Craftsman tools and putting money into the establishment and the development of Craftsman tools, they took money out of Craftsman tools and they started putting it into like fancier clothing lines for women. Well, nobody's going to Sears to get their dress to go to, the gala. They're going to Bloomingdale's to get the dress. They're not going to Sears. So they created this diverse portfolio, completely ignoring where the money's actually coming from. Sears had like 500 plus real estate locations that were all cash generators just on the real estate, and they started selling them off to put money in their diverse portfolio. So if you don't know, or you're not seriously intentional about investing in the things that actually make you money, and you can't answer the question, where does 80% of my profit come from? Then you're in trouble as an organization. And it's a sad story for Sears. They totally went bankrupt. They went out of business. Now there's like 10 stores or something like that across America. They were huge. So not asking the right problem question has companies like Quibi go out of business. Not asking the right, where does your profitability come from, makes organizations like Sears go out of business. And the final question that we had in these three questions, what's your obvious advantage? In this case, let's stop talking about failure companies. Let's talk about a really successful company.
Negative.
Yeah, and this will actually turn into a failure company if they don't answer these questions correctly. But Apple Corporation is not a failure company. And the reason why is the reason why Apple isn't failing is because they have a very obvious advantage. Apple made this decision that they were going to make sure that every one of their products was as easy to use as possible. So when Apple was designing the iPad, and when they designed like the little the iPod, like the iPhone, the iPod, the iPad, the design was, hey, we're going to make this so that a 4-year-old can use it. And before that time, anything technology was designed for somebody who was at least high school educated or college educated, or if I'm going to use a computer, I have to learn, I have to read books, I have to do this thing. And Apple Corporation said, no. Let's make this so that any 4-year-old can pick it up and use it. They also designed every one of the software apps. If you are going to design software that's going to work on a Mac, you have to make it work the way the Mac makes it work. So if I'm using Adobe Photoshop on a Mac, it's going to have the same menu system from the Mac. the PC world, the Microsoft Corporation, they're like, hey, you can use it however you want. And every different software that I use, I'm going to have to learn a new way of using that software. But Apple said, hey, no, look, this is our obvious advantage. You can pick it up as a 4-year-old and make use of our thing. That's the way that we're going to design our software. So so that's a question, Apple is really good with an obvious advantage. And any company that really has a clear, obvious advantage, like, oh, that's their obvious advantage, like it makes that company able to gain market share and to stay at the top. It's like, what is the obvious advantage of Crocs? They're comfortable. It's obvious,
right.
There you go. What's the obvious advantage of a supermarket? All the food is at one place. I can go in and get this thing. But it's like, what's the obvious advantage of your particular clothing brand? Well, we have patches on the shoulders. Is that an advantage? Like, I don't know. What's the obvious advantage of your software technology? Well, it's going to give you perfect analytics. Okay, well, there's an obvious advantage. So it's like, what is that singular thing that gives your organization an edge in the marketplace? And if you don't have a great answer to that question, your organization is likely too complex to actually beat out the other clients or to actually beat out the other competitors that are in the marketplace.
That's right.
So that's a third really good question.
Yeah.
So Bernie, let me ask you a question. So I've been talking for a while. Let me flip the script back at you. What do you think are some of the myths that people believe about their business or nonprofit? And really they're myths that they believe because they haven't answered these fundamental questions for their target audience. Like if you were to give me 3 myths of what is it that people think about their business, that if they answer these questions, they will remove those myths from their mind.
Yeah. That's a great question, Joshua. There's 3 things come to mind.
Yeah.
Number 1, I think it's the field of dreams myth. That is, if you build it, they will come, right? If I build an ice cream shop, then everybody's going to come to my ice cream shop,
Yeah.
And that's actually not true. If you don't have a special obvious advantage, now it could be location, right? If you've got a fantastic location, then okay, if you build it, they'll come. You've got a fantastic location. You're on the corner of Wall Street and Main Street or whatever, and so that's great. But just because you build it doesn't mean people are going to come do it unless you answer those questions, right?
That's fantastic.
That's one.
True.
The second one, and I think this is super common. I see this with clients. I know you probably see this with clients all the time. Hey, if I meet my own need and I'm meeting my needs, then and that's going to make my business grow because like I'm solving one of my problems. The problem is that your problem could be exclusive to you. If you're not solving the problems of a large enough population in the market, you're not going to have a business. So again, you've got to answer those questions, right? To figure out, like, am I actually solving other people's problems, right?
Well, let me clarify, make sure that I heard you right. So what you're saying is business owners who build their business around themselves. If I build this business for me, it's going to work. It's going to thrive. Like I'll be able to do everything because I built my business around my needs. What you're saying is, no, if you build your business around your client's needs, then your business is going to thrive. So it's a total like build your perfect business. That's a myth. Build the customer's perfect business and you'll always have a business.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it may not be as creative and beautiful and cute and like, I'm going to do this thing with all of these fancy, shebang, whatever. And it's actually, no, if you're not meeting a customer's need, I don't care how cute and fancy and beautiful or whatever it is, you've got to build a business around the customer. And then I think the third thing, Joshua, that comes to my mind is the myth of do what you love and you won't work a day in your life, right? That's just, it's just not the way the world works. I mean,
Hey,
I'm not saying
if you
like there
find
are
anybody that
parts.
actually makes that work, then let me know.
I mean, and there probably are on Instagram. They like put some things up and pretend like it works. I don't know, but I just know that I love what I do, but I really work hard. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I mean, it requires hard work. Serving people is it's a hard job, and it means sometimes it means a lot of hours, sometimes it means a lot of heartache, sometimes it means a lot of just tedium. But if you're going to serve people, you're going to have to work hard, and even no matter how much you love it, and you're going to have to do things you don't love so much, right?
Yeah. It's
So
so
yeah,
true. It's so
yeah.
true. I really like, it's funny. The things that you just mentioned, if you build it, they will come. And, build a business around your ideal work, and
Mhm.
like work 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and you're going to thrive. Like, those are actually questions that people are throwing out there as if there's real answers to those questions in the market. And business owners are paying just scads of money to go to that seminar. Your ideal work
Right.
that serves you. And like, that is just so, at being a consultant, I see all these things on the internet. I see all these things on like YouTube's, and I look at that and I'm like, God, no, that's just so wrong. That's not actually going to help the client. What does help the client is not asking self-centered questions. What helps the client is asking customer-centric questions.
That's right.
So the reason why these questions on our toolkit are, I believe, the right questions, the fundamental questions, is they're not about you. They're about your customer. And if you have a good answer for those questions, you're going to have a good customer base. If you don't have a good answer to those questions, you are not going to have a good question. If we're not asking the right questions, we end up getting stuck in our own head. And asking the right questions helps me get out of my own head and get into the mental space that I need to be in, so that I can really grow an organization that's going to thrive.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Joshua, like Tim Ferriss put out a book back 20 years ago at this point, about the 4-hour work week. And
yeah,
that book is actually not bad. It's not a bad
no,
book.
yeah.
But people have misconstrued that, thinking, I can just work 4 hours a it's like Tim Ferriss has never worked 4 hours a week in his life. The man puts in like probably 60-hour work weeks, right? It's just, there's just, he's serving his customer, and he's gotten pretty rich because of that. So, hey, Joshua, as thinking about questions again, I want to go back to this because I think it's super important. So we have these 3 critical questions about the problem you're solving, 80% of your income, your obvious advantage. Give to our audience a few fundamental principles about how to ask these 3 critical questions. How do we do this? What is the way? What is the wise way to ask these questions of themselves?
Yeah, well, first of all, Bernie, we're not going to ask good questions if we're not prompted. Like that, like these tools that grow ability, all they are is they're just question prompts. And if I don't have a calendar, or rather, if on my calendar isn't a prompt to ask really good questions, I'm going to get distracted by the chaos and the clutter and the busyness, and I'm going to completely forget about, what it is that I should be asking. So one of the fundamentals in asking good questions is to set up prompts so that I am asking the right questions on a regular basis. Every year, what are the 3 questions I need to ask? Every quarter, what are the 3 questions I need to ask? Every month, what are the 3 questions I need to ask? Every week, what are the 3 questions I need to ask? So using good tools that ask you good questions are really critical. And that's one of the reasons why we have this strategic calendar at Growability, which is strategically asking you the right questions every year, every quarter, every month. Another thing about questions is, we're not going to be able to learn about our customers if we don't ask them questions. And our business isn't going to be able to thrive until we're asking our customers questions and getting feedback from our questions so that we know the questions we should be asking about our organization.
Right.
So we ask ourselves questions to develop assumptions about what we believe and to talk with other people and to get valuable input from our team. Then we ask our clients questions to validate or devalidate those questions to make sure that we're not spending a lot of money building a service or a product that nobody really wants.
Yeah.
But the third thing about questions is not all questions are equal. If you don't ask the exact right question, you can really just distract yourself by asking the wrong question. Rabbit hole questions are rife in our world. There are rabbit hole questions everywhere,
Yeah.
but dig a hole questions or do the right thing questions are really the questions that what you really want to focus on. Ask those questions first and then ask a ton of other questions, but don't get bogged down with asking a ton of not the exact important question. First ask the little questions and then, ask the other questions that you need.
Yeah. All right, let's think about this entire tool. We're talking about 3 questions here. These 3 questions are super customer centric, focused on solving a customer's problem, this kind of thing. Are all 7 questions that are on this tool or in this tool, are all 7 questions that are in this tool customer centric?
Actually, 4 of the 7 questions are customer centric. We have 2 more questions, like in addition to the problem that you solve and, the obvious advantage, we have 2 other questions that are like about your product and service offering and about the value engine, like how you create the value that you provide. And then we have 2 questions that are about you and energy levels and, lifestyle choices and energy tank kind of questions. So there are those things. I'm not saying, hey, don't ever ask about how do you build the organization to perfectly meet the needs that you have. But those are, those are part of our initial, 7 most important questions you can ask about your business. But you've got to have that mix as well. So it's, if you're going to lean in a direction, lean towards serving the client. And then also, what do I need to do to be able to continue serving the client by my own lifestyle choices and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So thinking about our customer today, which is you who are listening to this podcast, I want you to get the most out of this episode. So Joshua, if you could just share with our listeners, how can they maximally benefit from today's free business leadership coaching consulting podcast episode?
Yeah. If you're a business owner, get a blank piece of paper and write down what is the problem that your business overcomes or the opportunity that your business provides. Or if you're a nonprofit leader, write that same question, but add, how does your nonprofit contribute to human flourishing? Number 1. Number 2, write down and discover and look at your books and figure out exactly where 80% of your profit comes from. Does it come from 1 client? Does it come from 50 clients? Does it come from 1 product? Does it come from 17 products? Like where does 80% of your profit come from? Or if you're a nonprofit, where does 80% of your financial support come from? And number 3, write down what is our obvious advantage and see how long it takes you to come up with your obvious advantage. If it's not obvious, that's a problem. If it's not obvious to you, think about how difficult it's going to be obvious to your clients, like to your customers and your people who are buying your product. So that's what to do. If you want to maximize this podcast, take those things and write them down. If you are a coach, then you want to, number 1, make sure that your clients are asking these critical fundamental questions. Take the Growability Field of Business tool and don't let them wiggle off the hook. This is an absolute fundamental. Bernie, would you agree with that? Like, what do you think? Like, if you're a coach, if you're somebody that is coaching this tool or working with a client who should be asking these questions, what advice would you give to the coach? I just spoke to the business owner. Speak to the coaches that would listen to this. How can they implement, the tool, this field of business tool?
Yeah, that's I think an excellent question. And here's what I've discovered, Joshua, as a coach and coaching people through this tool. First of all, if you're a coach, you can't soft pedal this thing. You've got to be a bulldog. You've got to not take the first, what my obvious advantage is this. Like I'm gonna, here's the easy answer. Never take the first thing that comes out of your client's mouth. You've got to dig, you've got to ask more questions, you've got to make them sit with it and think about it and really, because these are critical. If they're going to succeed, they've got to get to the core of all 7 of these questions.
Yeah.
And
it's not a simple checkbox. This isn't like here's an easy checkbox. Let's move on. I spent 10 minutes on this. How comes we're not done already? Yeah, you really got to, that's great advice.
That's right.
Great advice.
That's right.
What else?
So the second thing is this tool is in the growability model. This tool is foundational. It's like there's 3 foundational things that we're going to talk about later, but this is number 1 foundational. Don't, just because something seems more fun, more important, more pressing, don't let your client skip past this. This is number 1 thing. When I work with clients, they do this first. Yeah. This is the first thing. And then after that, we'll be like, oh, well, maybe we need to go down this path or this path or this path. But this is the number 1 thing that we don't want to skimp on. Don't let them skip past this. And then I think the third thing is that if they can connect you with an ideal target client, like you validate their answers. So talk to their clients, help them have conversations with their clients or with their customers or whoever, and really validate the answers. Make them validate the answers. Don't just take their word for it, because they may not know. The client knows, the customer knows.
That's great advice. I mean, when we're working with a client, one of the first questions I'll ask them is, hey, give me like a handful of your ideal clients, your best target clients, and give me their phone number and let me ask them how they would answer these questions. Mm-hmm. And then I get feedback from that client and I can see whether my client is really sharp and they understand their client needs and their market and things like that. I can validate that against the feedback that I get from an actual client. That is great, Bernie. That's really great advice. I don't know that we got our 15-minute podcast down here. We're probably in the 20-ish minutes, but Bernie, this has been a really great conversation. Can you go ahead and close us out?
Absolutely.
And
no, this has been a lot of fun. So, hey, I want to remind everyone that you are doing better than you think, and you have more potential than you know. Thank you for growing with Growability. We also want to remind all of our listeners to be sure to get your own copy of the Growability Toolkit, which includes this tool and 163 more pages of workbook, of tools, of what you need for your business, for your coaching needs. This includes digital files, which is like PDFs, Word documents, Google documents. The whole thing is available for only $250. You can go to growability.com or contact us at info@growability.com, and we will get that to you. So please be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channels, and share this only with people you really like. We'll see you next week.